Welcome, dear subscribers and curious listeners of my channel. Today we'll talk about how one person can radically change the atmosphere of an entire universe. When director Alfonso Cuarón took on the third film in the Harry Potter franchise, The Prisoner of Azkaban, fans were filled with anticipation. After all, the first two films had been directed by Chris Columbus, whose tone and visual approach were completely different. Cuarón brought a darker, more mature tone, and along with it came not only visual changes but key alterations to the story. Some scenes from the book were shortened, while others were removed entirely. Today, I'll tell you about the most important differences between the book and the film Harry Potter and The Prisoner of Azkaban. Enjoy watching. Number 1. The Firebolt. In the book, Harry loses his beloved Nimbus 2000 during a match against Hufflepuff. It's blown away by the wind and smashed by the Whomping Willow. Later, he receives a mysterious Christmas present, the newest broomstick model, the Firebolt. Since no one knows who sent it, the teachers confiscate it for inspection. What if it was cursed by Sirius Black? But in the movie, Harry gets the Firebolt only at the very end. There are no suspicions, no investigations, but it's just a gift with a hint. A Buckbeak feather is attached, so the audience can guess who it's from. Number 2. Learning the Patronus. In the book, Harry struggles for a long time to master the Patronus charm. Lupin explains he must concentrate on the happiest memory he can recall. Harry's first attempts fail, and only on the third try does he succeed, when he recalls the moment he found out he was a wizard and would be leaving the Dursleys. In the film, Harry manages it faster, by the second try. The memory he uses, however, is fictional, a conversation with his parents, whom he never actually knew. Number 3. Flying on Buckbeak. In the film, the flight on the hippogriff becomes one of the most visually stunning scenes. Harry soars over the grounds, sweeps past Hogwarts towers, and glides across the Black Lake. He even lets go of Buckbeak and screams in delight, as if shedding all his worries. But in the book, the flight is much more modest. Harry circles the paddock where Buckbeak grazes and soon admits he still prefers flying on a broomstick. Number 4. Harry won the Quidditch Cup. In the books, Harry competes in the Quidditch Cup 3 times, but it's only in the third installment that his team finally wins. This is especially significant for team captain Oliver Wood. It's his last chance to claim the cup. However, in the film, Quidditch is nearly cut out. We only see one match against Hufflepuff. Gryffindor's final victory happens entirely off-screen. Number 5. Aunt Marge's flight. In the book, the scene with Aunt Marge is dramatic yet restrained. She inflates like a balloon and floats to the ceiling. Uncle Vernon tries to stop her, but fails. In the film, the scene is pure satire. Aunt Marge doesn't just float. She bursts out of the house and drifts into the sky, while Vernon clings to her legs, shouting and trying to stop Harry's burst of rage. Number 6. No Cho Chang. Although Cho Chang makes her first appearance in The Prisoner of Azkaban in the books, the filmmakers chose to introduce her only in the 4th movie. In the book, she's Ravenclaw's seeker and competes against Harry during a Quidditch match. She watches him closely and a tense rivalry begins. Since Quidditch is nearly absent in the film, there simply wasn't room for Cho. Number 7. Hogsmeade permission. Harry desperately wants to visit Hogsmeade with his friends. In the book, he even asks Cornelius Fudge to sign his permission slip, a bold and desperate move. Naturally, Fudge refuses. In the movie, this entire scene is skipped, along with the entire subplot about trying to obtain permission. Number 8. Who discovered the Marauders map? In the film, Professor Snape catches Harry wandering at night with the Marauders map. He demands to know what it is. The map insults him. Then Lupin appears, quickly diffuses the situation, and drags Harry away. It plays as a simple interruption, Lupin saving Harry from detention. But in the book, this moment is layered and clever. Snape actually brings the map to Lupin himself, angry and suspicious. And it's Lupin, not Snape, who instantly recognizes it. He stares at the parchment and knows exactly what it is, not because he's a teacher, because he helped create it. "I am Moony," Lupin admits later, one of the 4 Marauders, alongside Padfoot, Wormtail, and Prongs. The map isn't just a magical tool here, it's a relic of their friendship. When Lupin sees it in Snape's hands, his reaction isn't just concern for Harry. It's personal, the past staring back at him. The film cuts this thread. Viewers never learn that Lupin is one of its makers, that he, James, Sirius, and Peter left behind more than just memories. They left magic. And for a brief moment, that magic is in danger of being destroyed. Number 9, the Marauders' backstory. In the book, the story of the Marauders is not just a background detail. It's the emotional spine of the past. When Lupin finally opens up, he doesn't just confess that he's a werewolf. He tells Harry how James Potter, Sirius Black, and Peter Pettigrew learned to become animagi, unregistered, illegal shapeshifters, just to keep him company during his transformations. "They became animagi to keep me company," Lupin says quietly. James turned into a stag, Sirius into a dog, Peter into a rat. They called themselves Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. It wasn't just a joke, it was a pact, a symbol of love and loyalty. This revelation changes everything. The Marauders' map, once a fun magical artifact, becomes something sacred. It was built by 4 boys who loved adventure but loved each other more. Their bond becomes real, powerful, and tragic, because that same group was torn apart by betrayal. Peter turned on James. Sirius was blamed. Remus was left behind. When Lupin says, "I thought he was the traitor," he isn't talking about Sirius. He means himself. The guilt, the silence, the weight of old friendships, it all spills out in that moment. In the film, this story is barely there. The names on the map mean nothing. No explanation. No animagi transformation story. No boyhood loyalty or heartbreak. Viewers who haven't read the book are left in the dark. The Marauders are just names on parchment. Their history, their meaning is erased, and with it, the deep ache of what Harry has truly inherited. Not just magic, but a shattered brotherhood. Number 10, Ron and Hermione's Crookshanks conflict. In the book, the tension between Ron and Hermione grows slowly but painfully. It starts when Hermione buys Crookshanks, a large ginger cat with a flat face and a nasty attitude towards Scabbers, Ron's beloved rat. The attacks aren't subtle. Crookshanks stalks Scabbers relentlessly, knocking things over, hiding under furniture, always watching. Then one day Scabbers disappears. Ron is furious. "Your stupid cat's eaten him," he shouts. Hermione defends Crookshanks, but her voice trembles. They stop talking for weeks. Harry is stuck in the middle, choosing silence over sides. This conflict isn't about a cat and a rat. It's about loyalty, pride, and growing pain. Ron feels Hermione doesn't care about his feelings. Hermione feels unfairly judged. Their friendship fractures. It's one of the first times readers see the trio not as an unbreakable team, but as real teenagers with tempers and blind spots. When Scabbers reappears, thin and shaking, the wound between them deepens. Ron sees it as proof. Hermione, already hurt, doesn't know what else to say. "Fine," she whispers. "Don't believe me." In the film, all of this is trimmed to a few sarcastic lines and annoyed glances. The long, aching silence is gone. The emotional build-up disappears. Crookshanks chases Scabbers once or twice, and that's it. There's no late-night confrontation, no fractured friendship. What takes chapters to unfold in the book is reduced to seconds, and with that, a rich, messy piece of growing up, of learning how to fight and forgive, is quietly lost. Number 11, Trelawney's Real Prophecy. It begins like any other divination lesson. Professor Trelawney, wrapped in shawls and scented smoke, speaks in her usual misty voice. Harry is alone with her, ready to leave. Then something changes, her voice drops, her eyes roll back. She speaks in a rasping tone, not her own. The Dark Lord lies alone and friendless, abandoned by his followers. His servant has been chained these 12 years. Harry freezes. He's never heard her speak like this before. She isn't predicting tea leaves anymore. This is real. In the book, this moment sends a chill down the spine. The prophecy continues. Tonight, before midnight, the servant will break free and set out to rejoin his master. It's not vague, it's not symbolic, it's a warning, a direct line from the present to Voldemort's future return. And it's true. That very night, Peter Pettigrew escapes, not just from the shrieking shack, but from justice, from exposure. He disappears into the dark and on his way to revive the most feared wizard in the world. The film barely gives it a second. Trelawney suddenly speaks in a hushed tone, says a few cryptic words, then snaps out of it. There's no gravity, no reaction from Harry, no follow-up. The scene passes like fog over a window pane. There, then gone. To viewers who hadn't read the book, it likely seemed like just another odd moment from an odd teacher, but readers knew that prophecy changes everything. The difference matters. In the book, Trelawney stops being a joke. For one terrifying moment, she becomes a true seer. The stakes leap forward. A shadow falls over the next book. The prophecy plants a seed, a whisper that Voldemort's return isn't a matter of if, but when. The film lets that whisper fade before it can reach the audience, and with it, the sense that darkness is no longer coming. It's already on the move. Number 12, Snape's role in the finale. In the book's climax, Severus Snape storms into the shrieking shack with fury in his eyes and his wand raised. He's not calm, he's not careful, he's ready to strike. "Give me a reason," he hisses at Sirius Black, his voice shaking with hatred. Snape is convinced he's finally caught his enemy. To him it's justice, revenge for Lily. For years of suspicion, he sees only guilt, and he's blind to anything else. His rage is so blinding that Harry has to disarm him. Together with Ron and Hermione, Harry casts Expelliarmus and blasts Snape against the wall. This moment in the book is raw, dangerous. It shows just how deep Snape's emotions run. Not only does he distrust Sirius and Lupin, he hates them. When everything unravels and Peter Pettigrew escapes, Snape's humiliation is complete. Later, after Harry and Hermione use the time turner to change the night's events, Snape finds them back in the hospital wing and loses control. "You've been confounded," he roars at Dumbledore. He slams doors, accuses everyone of conspiracy. The truth slips through his fingers and it drives him mad. In the film, none of this survives. Instead, Snape stands between the children and the werewolf, throwing his arms out to shield them. It's noble, heroic even. But it's not the Snape J.K. Rowling wrote. His fury is replaced by silence, his pain erased. He becomes a background figure, almost comic relief in the chaos, and what should have been a defining moment for his character is reduced to a gesture. The loss isn't just about missing action, it's about losing insight. Snape's hatred of Sirius and Lupin isn't just personal. It's rooted in his past, in his trauma, in the memory of the girl he loved. When the film cuts his anger, it cuts the reason behind it. Viewers miss the truth that Severus Snape isn't just a bitter teacher, he's a man haunted by everything he couldn't protect. And now, once again, the past escapes him. Number 13, Sirius's escape on Buckbeak. In the film's final minutes, Sirius Black escapes into the night sky atop Buckbeak. The music swells, the camera soars behind them. It feels like freedom. He leans forward, gripping the feathers, wind tearing past his face. Harry watches from the tower, eyes wide, filled with awe. It's a scene designed to stick in your memory, a man reborn, fleeing the prison of his past, high above the world. But in the book, the escape is quieter. No tower, no music, no epic flight, just shadows, just silence. After Hermione and Harry set Buckbeak free using the time turner, they return to the top floor of the castle. There, Sirius climbs onto the hippogriff's back. Rowling writes, "With one last look at Harry, Sirius mounted Buckbeak and kicked off from the window ledge. They rose into the air and were gone." No dramatic framing, no sweeping shot of the castle fading behind them, just a man vanishing into darkness. That difference matters. In the film, Sirius's escape feels like a victory lap. In the book, it feels like a retreat. The tone is heavier, more fragile. He's still a wanted man, still hunted, still unproven. The book doesn't give us celebration, it gives us tension. Harry doesn't smile, he worries. He wonders what will happen to Sirius now, with only Buckbeak and the Knight to protect him. The director, Alfonso Cuarón, chose spectacle over subtlety. And it worked. It gave the film an emotional exhale. But for those who read the book, the change is clear. Rowling didn't promise safety or joy, she promised survival. Barely. And that difference says everything about where the characters truly stand when the credits roll. Number 14, no tower conversation with Sirius. After Buckbeak's daring escape, the film gives us a quiet scene on a high tower. Sirius, fresh from near capture, speaks to Harry under the moonlight. It's peaceful, even touching. Sirius says, "When all this is over, if you want, you can come and live with me." For the first time, Harry hears those words he's always longed for, a home. The audience is left with a soft glow of hope, a promise that Harry might finally have a family again. It's beautiful, but it's not what J.K. Rowling wrote. In the book, The Prisoner of Azkaban, this emotional exchange doesn't happen on a windy rooftop. It happens in the hospital wing. Harry is recovering from the night's chaos. There is no quiet tower, no dramatic sky, just the sterile light of Madame Pomfrey's ward. Sirius doesn't make a promise with a smile and kind eyes. He writes a letter. "I hereby give Harry Potter permission to visit Hogsmeade on weekends." That single line, sealed and signed by Sirius Black, becomes more than ink on parchment. It's proof. He is stepping into Harry's life, not just as a godfather in name, but as someone who is ready to take responsibility. This letter isn't just for sentiment, it serves a clear purpose. Harry uses it to convince Madame Pomfrey that he should be allowed to go to Hogsmeade, a privilege he's been denied the whole year. It's a small victory, but meaningful. And more than that, it shows Sirius acting like a parent, practical, thoughtful, present. The movie erases that moment, trading it for something more cinematic, but less grounded in the reality of the characters' lives. By skipping the letter, the film loses something vital. In the book, Harry doesn't just get a hopeful future, he gets paperwork. He gets a guardian who follows through. He sees that love isn't always grand gestures under starlight. Sometimes it's a signed document, a promise written down, something real, something lasting. Number 15, Hermione's impossible schedule. Hermione Granger was never just a clever girl, she was a phenomenon, a force of nature compressed into the body of a third-year Hogwarts student. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, J.K. Rowling took her well beyond the bounds of ordinary academic brilliance. The book reveals a Hermione on the verge of implosion, caught in a web of magical time travel and an impossible schedule that no one else, no one sane at least, would dare to attempt. The film, however, brushes past the core of this storyline. Where the book offers mystery, confusion, and eventual revelation, the movie offers a passing curiosity, a background quirk barely explained until the climax arrives. The result is a significant shift in how we perceive Hermione's struggle and the deep cost of her brilliance. In the novel, Hermione's academic life in her third year is portrayed as a mystery in itself. She takes more classes than physically possible, including arithmancy, ancient runes, and Muggle studies, all subjects that often take place at the same time. Ron notices that she appears in one class and vanishes, only to appear in another classroom across the castle mere minutes later. Her bag bulges with an impossible load of books. She always seems tired, snappish, and withdrawn, and yet no one can understand how she manages it all. One moment she was there beside them, Rowling writes, The next, she had vanished. The book invites the reader into this subtle enigma, planting clues long before the truth is revealed. Harry, Ron, and even their professors are puzzled by Hermione's uncanny ability to be in two places at once. McGonagall is tight-lipped when questioned. Ron expresses his irritation openly. "She's got too much work," he grumbles, after Hermione snaps at him during a moment of stress. The reader is left to wonder, how is she doing it? And more importantly, why is no one stopping her? This atmosphere of mystery is deeply embedded in the book's pacing, gently leading the reader toward one of the most satisfying twists in the series, the existence of the Time Turner. The film, by contrast, does not allow this subplot the space to breathe. Hermione's overloaded schedule is alluded to briefly in a few scattered lines. She appears suddenly in the divination classroom after Trelawney begins a roll call, an oddity brushed aside with Ron's confused glance. There's no real build-up of tension, no puzzle to unravel. The Time Turner is only introduced in the final act, with McGonagall casually instructing Hermione to use it to help save Sirius Black and Buckbeak. The magical object feels less like the key to a mystery and more like a convenient plot device which robs the story of the layered intrigue that Rowling wove into the book. In the book, the emotional cost of Hermione's academic overreach is significant. She's not just juggling too many classes, she's fraying at the edges. Her friendship with Ron deteriorates over petty arguments, including the infamous Crookshanks vs. Scabbers saga. She withdraws from Hogsmeade visits, choosing to study instead. She breaks under pressure during exams, shouting at Harry and Ron and breaking down in tears. The most chilling moment comes when Professor McGonagall tells Harry, "Miss Granger, a Time Turner is a very dangerous device. We only give them under exceptional circumstances." The reader finally understands that Hermione has been granted access to a dangerous magical artifact, not for saving lives but for fitting in more study time. This revelation redefines her character for the reader. It transforms Hermione from a high-achieving student into a tragic figure overwhelmed by expectations, her own and those of the adult world around her. Dumbledore, in a rare misstep, allows a 13-year-old girl to manipulate time daily, trusting that she won't lose herself in the process. There is no adult supervision, no mental health check, only the assumption that Hermione will handle it because she always does. The book silently critiques this blind faith in her capabilities. Rowling subtly critiques the academic system through Hermione's arc. The Time Turner is not a reward but a symbol of a broken culture that values productivity over well-being. Hermione's suffering is visible, and yet she keeps going, believing that anything less than perfection would be failure. "I've handed in my arithmancy essay," she snaps at Ron, "and I'm starting on runes now." There is pride in her voice, but also exhaustion. Readers, especially young ones, see in Hermione a reflection of their own world. Homework, pressure, the fear of not being good enough. The film glosses over this, losing a chance to deliver one of the most poignant messages in the series. The mystery of the Time Turner in the book is not just about how Hermione does it, it's about what it does to her. There is an eerie undercurrent to her presence. At times, she is too quiet, too efficient, too sharp. The reader senses that something is not right. Rowling even leaves subtle inconsistencies. Hermione speaking of a class Harry never saw her attend, or arriving breathless when she should have had time. These details create a narrative puzzle that mirrors the larger mystery of Sirius Black and the Marauders' map. The Time Turner becomes a narrative twin to the Shrieking Shack's secret, both withheld until the climax, both altering everything that came before. By removing this thread of mystery, the film sacrifices emotional complexity for brevity. It's understandable given the constraints of time and pacing, but it means the audience misses out on the deeper texture of Hermione's story. The Time Turner sequence at the end is visually exciting, but without the earlier build-up, it lacks emotional weight. The viewer sees Hermione use the device but does not fully grasp what it has cost her to wield it all year. There is no payoff because there was no setup. In the book, the moment she turns, the hourglass feels monumental, a glimpse into her secret life, finally revealed. In the movie, it's just another twist in a magical adventure. Number 16, the Grim and its ominous symbolism. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the presence of the Grim, or the Grim, as it is ominously called, casts a long shadow over the entire narrative. In the book, J.K. Rowling weaves a slow, burning terror around this spectral black dog that haunts Harry's steps, embedding in the reader a creeping fear that something dark and inevitable is approaching. The creature first appears not through action, but through mood. It emerges in the chill of the night, on a quiet street where Harry sits alone, away from the noise and cruelty of the Dursleys. A shape looms in the darkness, massive, canine, watching him with unmoving eyes. This is no ordinary dog, and Harry knows it. But the fear comes not only from its presence, it comes from the echoes of what he's heard. Professor Trelawney, with her misty voice and unsettling gaze, speaks of death. The Grim is a death omen, she says, and Harry has now seen it twice. This association of the dog with mortality begins a chain of psychological unease that affects everything Harry does. What the film adaptation misses is this escalating dread. In Alfonso Cuarón's atmospheric and visually ambitious film, the black dog appears suddenly and violently, leaping at Harry from the shadows. It's terrifying, yes, but in a visceral, almost action-oriented way. There is no careful build-up, no layering of superstition, symbolism, or folklore that the book so masterfully crafts. The movie treats the dog as a physical threat, merely a creature to be feared because of its size, strength, and apparent malice. But in the novel, the Grim is something more, a metaphysical warning, a premonition, a whisper from the beyond that death is near. Harry's obsession with the black dog grows as he connects its image to his own thoughts about fate and mortality. In the book, when Harry opens the Daily Prophet, he sees a photograph of himself playing Quidditch, soaring high above the stadium on his Firebolt, and there, lurking at the edge of the stands, is the same massive dog. It hadn't been his imagination. There is something real out there, something watching. This image reinforces the sense that Harry is being hunted by something inhuman and inescapable. The reader is pulled deeper into this fear with Harry, unable to dismiss it. The book forces us to inhabit Harry's growing anxiety, his certainty that he is being followed by death itself. By contrast, the film largely ignores this emotional dimension. It never shows Harry discovering the photograph in the Daily Prophet. It never allows the fear of the Grim to mature and evolve in Harry's mind. We don't see the multiple sightings, the quiet horror, as the legend of the death dog takes hold. There is no space for the dread to grow, no narrative breath given to the symbolism. Instead, the audience is treated to an early chase scene where the black dog jumps at Harry and vanishes. It's a scare, but not a story. In the book, Hermione and Ron, too, participate in unraveling the mystery. They don't know what the dog is, but they feel its presence in Harry's growing fear. When Harry admits to them that he saw it again, this time in the sky above the Quidditch pitch, struck down by a Dementor's cold presence, the dog becomes a symbol of Harry's unraveling psyche. His fear is no longer a background hum. It is a chorus of whispers telling him his time is nearly up. Rowling uses this device to reflect Harry's internal world. He has lost his parents, seen Voldemort return to power, and now believes he is cursed. The dog is not just an omen, it is the embodiment of everything he cannot control. None of this quiet development survives the transition to film. The audience, unfamiliar with the literary richness of the Grim, cannot fully grasp its weight. They see a creature. They do not feel the curse. The symbolism of death and fate is flattened into action sequences, missing the eerie tension that pulses through the book's pages. The film sacrifices slow horror for kinetic drama. Perhaps most tellingly in the novel, even Professor McGonagall, usually the voice of reason, cannot entirely dismiss the legend of the Grim. When she hears Harry has seen it, her voice is cautious, her words chosen with care. "The Grim, my dear boy." "My word, that's a bad sign." And then, with effort, she shifts away from it, trying to distract him with logic and Quidditch. But the moment sticks. If even McGonagall is rattled, then something must be terribly wrong. Rowling uses respected voices to amplify the superstition, making it harder for both Harry and the reader to shrug it off as nonsense. In contrast, the film leans heavily on Professor Trelawney as the lone voice of doom. While Emma Thompson's portrayal is wonderfully eccentric, her warnings feel more comic than chilling. The Grim becomes one more oddity in her long list of absurd predictions. Without the reinforcement of other characters' unease, the fear does not land. Trelawney's warning is isolated, and the image of the dog lacks mythic weight. The narrative twist that the black dog is not a harbinger of death but the misunderstood Sirius Black is far more powerful in the book because of how deeply the dog has been rooted in Harry's subconscious. When the truth is finally revealed, the emotional terrain shifts dramatically. The very symbol Harry associated with doom turns out to be his godfather, his protector, his last living link to his parents. "I thought it was a Grim," Harry says, stunned. But it wasn't. It was Sirius trying to watch over him from the shadows, protecting him in the only way he could. The transformation of this symbol from fear to comfort is one of the novel's great triumphs. Number 17, Trelawney's credibility in the book. In J.K., Rowling's Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the character of Professor Sybil Trelawney, stands as a compelling enigma, a woman surrounded by incense smoke, heavy shawls, and an aura of uncertainty. The book paints her as more than a mere comic relief. She is, in certain pivotal moments, a vessel of ancient magic far beyond her understanding. The film adaptation, while visually enchanting, does not fully capture the eerie gravity of her role, reducing Trelawney to a whimsical, eccentric figure whose presence inspires chuckles more than awe. This divergence between mediums becomes starkly evident in the portrayal of her true prophecy, an event that in the book trembles with foreboding power. When readers first meet Professor Trelawney in the third book, they are led through a dark spiral staircase into a perfumed, shadowy tower that reeks of candles and mysticism. Rowling immerses the reader in an other-worldly atmosphere, suggesting from the outset that Trelawney's domain is far removed from the logic and light of the rest of Hogwarts. The divination classroom itself is a manifestation of her personality, lined with teacups, crystal balls, and draped fabrics. In this space, the boundaries between reality and illusion blur. Trelawney speaks in a dreamy voice, frequently forecasting doom and disaster, particularly for Harry Potter. Her tendency to predict death becomes a running joke among students, making her seem more like a superstitious mystic than a credible teacher. The film adaptation captures her aesthetic well. Emma Thompson's portrayal is layered with dramatic flair, thick glasses and grand gestures. Her voice trembles with theatrical solemnity, but the emphasis lies heavily on comedy. Her exaggerated movements and whimsical attire elicit amusement rather than reverence. She seems less like a seer caught in the clutches of true sight, and more like a character in a pantomime, albeit a charming one. The film places her in a comedic role, often contrasted with the practical, no-nonsense teachers like McGonagall, who ridicules divination as a very imprecise branch of magic. Yet the book insists, subtly and persistently, that Trelawney is not merely a fraud. While much of her everyday divining may be vague or overblown, there exists within her a real, uncontrollable power. Dumbledore himself tells Harry later that Trelawney has made only 2 genuine prophecies in her life, one of them during Harry's 3rd year, when she suddenly slips into a trance and delivers a prophecy that chills the reader to the bone. This moment is not framed as ridiculous or overdone. It is mystifying and frightening. It shatters the image of Trelawney as a harmless oddball and replaces it, even if temporarily, with something far more ancient and unsettling. In the book, this prophecy occurs during Harry's divination exam. Trelawney suddenly stiffens, her voice changing completely. "It will happen tonight," she says in a hoarse, whispering tone. "The Dark Lord lies alone and friendless, abandoned by his followers. His servant has been chained these 12 years. Tonight, before midnight, the servant will break free and set out to rejoin his master." Rowling's prose abandons its usual rhythm to mark this shift. The language becomes ominous, deliberate. The moment is suspended in dread. This is not the Trelawney who predicts the grim in Harry's tea leaves. This is a conduit of fate itself. The film glosses over this scene. It includes the prophecy but loses its intensity in the delivery. It is treated like a performance. Trelawney's voice deepens, she trembles, but the cinematography and tone do not elevate the gravity. It feels like another curious moment in a series of oddities, rather than the climax of an unseen magical current. The prophecy's weight, the knowledge that Peter Pettigrew, hiding as Ron's pet rat, Scabbers, will escape and pave the way for Voldemort's return, is diminished. Viewers unfamiliar with the book might not grasp that this moment signals the beginning of the end. This simplification robs the prophecy of its narrative importance. In the book, this prophecy doesn't just foreshadow future events. It changes Harry's understanding of the world. Up until that moment, the pursuit of Sirius Black seems like a straightforward tale of a murderous traitor on the loose. But the prophecy introduces a hidden thread, the existence of a loyal servant biding his time. It is a revelation that forces Harry to question what he thinks he knows. The atmosphere surrounding this scene in the book is hushed and sacred, while the film moves past it quickly, eager to return to the faster-paced sequences. The true terror of the prophecy lies in its implications. The servant, as readers later confirm, is Peter Pettigrew, believed dead, but in fact living in secret at Hogwarts. This moment redefines the enemy. The danger is not just outside the walls of the school, but slithering unnoticed within them. The film's failure to linger on this point lessens its emotional and thematic impact. There is no slow realization, no dread building up. The viewer is not given the chance to feel the earth shifting beneath Harry's feet. Moreover, Rowling uses Trelawney's character to explore a deeper philosophical question. What does it mean to have a gift you cannot control? Trelawney herself does not remember her true prophecies. She speaks them in a trance and returns to normal with no recollection. It is a haunting idea, the mind as a vessel for something far greater and more dangerous than itself. This portrayal elevates her from being a parody of fortune-tellers to a tragic figure, someone both mocked and feared, whose greatest moments of insight occur beyond her conscious will. The film does not explore this duality. Trelawney's limited control over her gift ties her fate to themes of identity and belief. The magical world doubts her, and even the staff treat her as an eccentric at best. But the truth is more complex. She becomes a symbol of how appearances can deceive, and how even the least expected characters can carry enormous narrative weight. In Rowling's world, where magic often reflects inner truth, Trelawney is a contradiction, powerless and powerful, foolish and fateful. The film never conveys this layered complexity. Number 18. Lupin's struggles as a werewolf. In the quiet corners of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, where shadows stretch long and secrets flicker like candlelight, there lives a tale that the film adaptation only brushes with a passing glance. The tragedy and humanity of Remus Lupin, the werewolf. In the book, J.K. Rowling crafts his story with tender precision, allowing readers to understand the quiet sorrow beneath his gentle demeanor. He is not merely a teacher with a mysterious illness. He is a man burdened by a monstrous curse, shaped by isolation and redeemed only by friendship. The film, by contrast, reduces this depth to a brief conversation, robbing the viewer of the emotional richness embedded in Lupin's hidden world. Hermione Granger, ever the observer, is not fooled by Lupin's evasive absences. In the book, it is not Lupin himself who reveals his condition to Harry. Instead, the truth is uncovered slowly, like pieces of a puzzle slipping into place. Hermione, with her characteristic insight, deduces the secret by connecting subtle dots. The professor's monthly disappearances, his sudden fatigue, and his odd illnesses that seem to align suspiciously with the lunar calendar. She even consults books on magical creatures, piecing together what others had overlooked. "I recognized the signs," she later admits. "I read about werewolves in Fantastic Beasts and where to find them." This slow unravelling not only paints Hermione as sharp and resourceful, but also builds tension and mystery around Lupin's character, making the eventual revelation deeply satisfying and emotionally charged. The film, however, speeds past this slow burn. In a single, fleeting moment, Lupin tells Harry he is a werewolf. An offhand confession that lands without weight. There is no build-up, no tension, no trail of clues for the audience to follow. What could have been a powerful moment of vulnerability is reduced to a plot checkpoint. The tragedy of Lupin's existence is left unexplored, his curse treated like a costume rather than a crucible that shaped his soul. Where the book lingers, the film leaps, and something vital is lost in the haste. In Rowling's text, Lupin's affliction is not a dramatic twist but the essence of his being. We learn of his childhood, how he was bitten by Fenrir Greyback, a werewolf who targeted children deliberately. Lupin was 5 years old, and from that moment his life became a cycle of fear and shame. His parents tried to protect him, but society offered little comfort. Even the magical world, so rich in marvels, had no place for a werewolf child. Hogwarts only accepted him thanks to the compassion of Albus Dumbledore, who arranged for his monthly transformations to occur in the secluded, shrieking shack. It was a rare act of mercy in a life otherwise defined by rejection. This backstory, shared in the book, adds weight to every word Lupin says and every step he takes. When he hesitates before accepting the defense against the dark arts position, readers understand why. He fears discovery, he fears the judgment of others, he fears being the monster that society already assumes he is. These fears make him more than a character. They make him a reflection of real-world stigmas, of illness, of difference, of being the other. None of this complexity survives the transition to screen. The film touches the surface but never dives. Even Lupin's relationship with the Marauders, James Potter, Sirius Black and Peter Pettigrew, is more than a nostalgic footnote in the book. When his friends discovered his secret, they didn't run or recoil. Instead, they did something extraordinary. They learned how to become animagi, unregistered shapeshifters, so they could safely accompany him during his transformations. This gesture, described in Chapter 18, Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, was a lifeline. "They became animagi to keep me company," Lupin tells the trio. "They didn't care that I was a werewolf." The emotional resonance of this moment is staggering. It is about love, loyalty, and the defiance of fear. The book shows that friendship can pierce even the darkest night. The film mentions this only briefly, with no emotional scaffolding to support the weight of what it means. The viewer hears that James, Sirius, and Peter were animagi, but the implication is muddled and the emotion muted. We never feel the warmth of their moonlit escapades as animals, or the sense of freedom Lupin must have felt, no longer caged by his curse, but instead embraced in the form of a wolf by his dearest friends. The book shows us those nights under the full moon, the dog, the stag, and the rat keeping company with the werewolf. We see the bond forged in pain and laughter, a bond that echoes long after James's death and Sirius's imprisonment. This bond is part of what makes Lupin's story so deeply human. Lupin's own voice in the book is tinged with sorrow and humility. He does not dramatize his condition. Instead, he speaks of it with quiet pain. "It is a terrible thing to be a werewolf," he tells Harry. "I was a very small boy when I received the bite. My parents tried everything, but in those days there was no cure. These lines are not just exposition, they are a confession. Lupin is not merely teaching defense against the dark arts. He is embodying it. Every day he defends against the darkness within himself. Every moment of normalcy is a victory against the monster that waits beneath his skin. This struggle is invisible in the film. Viewers see a man who grows pale during the full moon, then transforms with dramatic flair. They do not see the years of self-loathing, the rejection from employers, the fear of hurting others. They do not see the boy who hid from the world, nor the man who still hides, afraid to love too much or hope too deeply. The book gives us all of this in careful, deliberate layers. Lupin becomes not just a werewolf, but a man who suffers and endures. He becomes a mirror for anyone who has ever felt marked, feared, or unwanted. When Lupin resigns from Hogwarts, the reason is heartbreaking. A parent has written to the school after discovering his condition. Lupin knows the tide of fear is rising again, and he chooses to leave before he is pushed. Parents will not want a werewolf teaching their children, he says, and after last night, I see their point. These words are soaked in resignation. They speak to a man who has internalized society's judgment, who has come to believe he is dangerous even when he has done nothing wrong. The book allows readers to mourn this injustice. The film once again skims over it, treating his departure as a necessity, not a tragedy. There is also the matter of the Wolfsbane potion, which plays a significant role in the book but barely gets a mention in the film. This potion, painstakingly brewed by Snape, allows Lupin to retain his mind during his transformations. It is a lifeline, a rare glimmer of hope in an otherwise bleak routine. Professor Snape has very kindly concocted a potion for me, Lupin tells the class. I take it every day for a week before the full moon. This line, simple on the surface, contains multitudes. It shows the effort required to manage his condition, the cooperation even from someone like Snape, and the fragility of the control Lupin must maintain. The film, uninterested in these nuances, simply shows a werewolf without explanation, reducing the entire subplot to a special effect. By stripping away the layers of Lupin's story, the film unintentionally diminishes the themes Rowling so carefully wove. The message of compassion, of seeing beyond the surface, is weakened. Lupin in the book is a lesson in empathy. He teaches not just spells and counter-curses, but understanding. When he teaches Harry the Patronus charm, he is not merely instructing him in magic, he is guiding him through fear and trauma. That relationship, one of mutual healing, is precious and tender. The film captures glimpses of it, but the context is too thin to leave a lasting impression. Rowling did not write Lupin as a plot device. She wrote him as a man whose life has been shaped by prejudice, pain, and perseverance. His werewolf curse is not just a twist, it is the axis on which his entire character turns. Every kindness he shows, every moment of quiet strength, is made more poignant by the burden he bears. When the book reveals his secret, it is not just a plot reveal. It is a tragedy, a confession, and a triumph all at once. The film's failure to reflect this emotional depth is not just a missed opportunity. It is a disservice to one of the series' most profoundly human characters. Remus Lupin is the soul of The Prisoner of Azkaban, the heart that beats quietly behind the twists and turns. The book honors his complexity, giving readers a story not just about werewolves, but about loneliness, loyalty, and the long road to self-acceptance. In reducing that story to a line or two, the film dims a light that should have burned far brighter. Number 19. Crookshanks knew about Peter Pettigrew. In the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Crookshanks is little more than a background nuisance. He darts through scenes like a blur of orange fur, constantly lunging at Ron's pet rat Scabbers, while the trio of friends argues and complains. To an uninformed viewer, Crookshanks appears simply territorial, even malicious. His behavior sparks irritation and conflict, particularly between Ron and Hermione. but his actions seem driven by animal instinct alone. The camera captures his aggression without context, turning a pivotal character into a plot device for tension. His intentions are never revealed, and the full weight of his awareness is left unexplored. But in the book, Crookshanks is more than just a clever cat. He becomes an ally in uncovering a dark and hidden truth, playing a role that is subtle, silent, and ultimately instrumental in revealing the true identity of Peter Pettigrew. From the first moment he appears in the third book, Crookshanks is portrayed as more than an ordinary pet. Described by J.K. Rowling as having a squashed face and bottle-brush tail, he is a creature of uncanny intelligence. Hermione purchases him at the magical menagerie, where he immediately shows a unique kind of awareness, not just of his surroundings, but of people. The shopkeeper even notes that Crookshanks has been there a long time, implying that he was waiting for the right person. When he locks eyes with Ron and Scabbers for the first time, he reacts with a burst of aggression that is startlingly precise. This is not the reaction of a cat merely chasing a rodent. It is the deliberate attack of something that knows what lies beneath the surface. Crookshanks's repeated attempts to catch Scabbers are not merely for show. In the book, his pursuit becomes relentless, but it's not random. He is targeting Peter Pettigrew, a man who has lived disguised as a rat for 12 years. As a magical creature with strong instincts and intelligence, Crookshanks is able to sense what others cannot. The book makes it clear that he sees through Pettigrew's disguise from the start. Harry even observes Crookshanks attempting to pounce on Scabbers more than once, and the text leaves no doubt that the cat's behavior is purposeful. Crookshanks took a flying leap and landed on Ron's head, Rowling writes, Ron yelped in pain and tried to dislodge him as Crookshanks dug his claws into Ron's scalp. That kind of aggression is too targeted, too intense to be simple jealousy or feline curiosity. As the story progresses, Crookshanks's intelligence becomes even more apparent. He forms an unlikely alliance with Sirius Black, who is then still believed to be a dangerous murderer. In his animagus form as a large black dog, Sirius finds an unexpected partner in the ginger cat. Crookshanks not only trusts Sirius, but assists him. This is a detail completely absent from the movie, where the black dog appears isolated and predatory. In the book, however, Rowling describes how Crookshanks delivers notes between Sirius and Harry, and even helps lead Harry to him. This cooperation is central to the unraveling of the mystery. When Harry follows the black dog into the tunnel beneath the Whomping Willow, it is Crookshanks who presses the knot on the tree's trunk to freeze its swinging limbs. This is not mere coincidence, it is the conscious action of an animal who knows what he's doing. The book says plainly, Crookshanks darted forward, he placed a paw on a knot on the trunk, and at once the tree stopped moving. This moment is entirely erased from the movie. The Whomping Willow freezes, but without explanation. The viewer is left to believe that perhaps Sirius knows the secret or that it happens by luck. Crookshanks, who in the book acts with clear understanding and purpose, is made invisible in this key moment. The omission strips him of agency and reduces the depth of the scene. In the book, it is the cat who gives the children access to the shrieking shack, and thus Crookshanks who helps uncover Peter Pettigrew's secret. This isn't a small role, it is the difference between solving the mystery and remaining in the dark. Moreover, the symbolism behind Crookshanks's actions adds to the gravity of his character. He is the only creature who sees Pettigrew for what he is, not a pet, but a traitor, a man who betrayed James and Lily Potter to Voldemort and then faked his own death. Every time Crookshanks lunges at Scabbers, he is trying to protect Harry. It's an act of loyalty, not hostility. He recognizes danger where humans see innocence. The reader is given this insight subtly through Crookshanks's persistence and growing involvement in the plot. When Hermione tries to apologize for Crookshanks's behavior, Ron refuses to accept it, further fueling their conflict, but the reader knows that Crookshanks is not wrong. He is the only one right from the beginning. By the time the truth is revealed in the Shrieking Shack, the full significance of Crookshanks's actions becomes clear. Scabbers is unmasked as Peter Pettigrew in an unforgettable sequence of revelations. "He's a wizard, an animagus," Sirius declares, "by the name of Peter Pettigrew." In that moment, Crookshanks's relentless pursuit is vindicated. Everything he tried to do was justified. But in the movie, this entire build-up is erased. Crookshanks is not part of the journey to the shack, nor does he play any role in revealing the traitor. The viewers miss the deeper narrative thread that connects Crookshanks to the unraveling of the Marauders' story. They lose a layer of poetic justice that enriches the book. Even Sirius Black, whose life was destroyed by Pettigrew's betrayal, seems to trust Crookshanks implicitly in the novel. When Sirius and Lupin finally corner Pettigrew, there is no surprise on Crookshanks's part. He hisses in recognition, not confusion. He knew all along. This feline side character becomes an emotional compass, a silent guide that directs the characters toward the truth. His absence from these key scenes in the movie flattens the emotional weight of the revelation. The betrayal still stings, but it arrives without the trail of clues that the book so carefully lays down. In choosing to omit Crookshanks's intelligence, the filmmakers also missed an opportunity to develop Hermione's storyline. In the book, her bond with Crookshanks reflects her intuition and judgment. She trusts her pet when others don't. She defends him fiercely, even at the cost of her friendship with Ron. This trust is rewarded when the truth comes out. In the film, however, Hermione appears overly defensive and emotional without real reason. Her instincts are left unsupported by narrative, and the audience never sees her vindicated. The layers of meaning that come from her loyalty to Crookshanks are stripped away, reducing a nuanced subplot to a pet squabble. Crookshanks's role in the book also elevates the magical realism of Rowling's world. He is not a talking animal nor a humanoid creature. He behaves as a cat, but a magical one, clever, perceptive, and capable of moral judgment. Rowling never breaks the rules of her world to grant him unnatural powers. Instead, she enriches the existing magical system by giving him depth. He operates within the boundaries of what a magical creature might know, and that makes his actions all the more impressive. In the movie, this subtle layering is replaced with action and spectacle. The absence of Crookshanks's intelligence also weakens the theme of hidden truths that pervades the third book. Prisoner of Azkaban is a story about mistaken identities, unspoken histories, and the slow revelation of painful secrets. Crookshanks embodies this theme. He sees what others cannot, and his attempts to act on this knowledge are ignored. His perseverance mirrors the book's central mystery, the search for truth beneath the surface. When he helps Sirius and Harry, he becomes a thread that connects the present to the past. Without him, the story loses one of its most eloquent symbols. Ultimately, Crookshanks's omission from the movie's key plot points simplifies the narrative. The story still works, but it lacks the richness that makes the book unforgettable. The small details, the paw on the knot, the wary stare at Scabbers, the quiet partnership with Sirius, add texture and meaning. They remind the reader that not all heroes walk on two legs. Some slink in shadows, hiss at traitors, and press their paw against secrets, hoping someone will notice. In the pages of the book, Crookshanks is not just Hermione's cat. He is a silent guardian of truth. Number 20, Missing Sir Cadogan. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, a knight in dented armor gallops through the pages of the book with all the force of a hurricane trapped in a teacup. Sir Cadogan, the ghostly knight who temporarily replaces the fat lady as the guardian of Gryffindor Tower, is one of the most whimsical, chaotic, and thoroughly British characters J.K. Rowling ever conjured. And yet, in Alfonso Cuarón's cinematic adaptation, he is absent, completely erased. The film, rich with fog, emotion, and darker tones, has no space for Cadogan's absurdity, no room for a ghost clanking through paintings with bravado and nonsense. And so, a character loved by book fans disappears into obscurity for casual moviegoers who never even knew what they missed. Sir Cadogan enters the story not quietly, but with the bang of a misfiring cannon, after Sirius Black slashes the portrait of the fat lady in his attempt to enter the Gryffindor common room, she vanishes in fright. Dumbledore must find a temporary replacement, and it is this moment when Sir Cadogan's opportunity arises. He is not chosen for his competence. Indeed, McGonagall looks deeply sceptical, but out of necessity. Sir Cadogan, writes Rowling, was the most eccentric knight who had ever lived, and that was saying something. He is introduced in a brief line that explodes with colour. He had a large plumed helmet on his head, and was brandishing a sword the size of a broomstick. He is not just a painting. He is a storm of self-importance and clumsy heroism, galloping from frame to frame as though the castle were his battlefield. The film adaptation, in its efforts to present a more cohesive and emotionally weighty narrative, trims what it sees as excess. But what it omits is more than a secondary figure. It omits a tone, a breath of ridiculousness that defines much of Rowling's magic. Sir Cadogan's presence marks a shift in the Gryffindor dormitory's day-to-day life. He refuses to stay still, rides from one portrait to another, and, most frustratingly for students, changes the password several times a day. Sir Cadogan had taken to changing the password every day, much to the annoyance of the Gryffindors. This, of course, leads to comedic mayhem. Neville. Longbottom, already forgetful, is especially troubled and writes all the passwords down, only to have them fall into Sirius Black's hands. That moment becomes a key plot point, yet it loses flavour in the film, where Cadogan doesn't exist to cause the initial chaos. What makes Sir Cadogan memorable is not merely his function as a security hazard. He is a parody of chivalry, a caricature of Arthurian legends turned up to 11. He boasts of valour in situations that require none, and sees life as a grand quest in which he is always the noble protagonist. When Harry, Ron and Hermione first meet him, he mistakes them for enemies and nearly runs them through. "Draw, you knaves, you dogs!" he yells, chasing them across the paintings. In this absurdity lies his charm. He is brave, to the point. Of danger, utterly, without self-awareness, but so sincere that one cannot help but love him. He rides a fat grey pony which often refuses to cooperate, and he challenges non-existent enemies at every corner. He is not helpful, but he is unforgettable. In the film, when the fat lady is attacked, we cut directly to Dumbledore interrogating the damaged painting, and then the next scene flows into increased security. There is no sign of the knight who replaced her, no galloping pony, no eccentric speeches. This absence flattens the tone. The book offers relief from the tension of Sirius Black's looming threat through Cadogan's antics. The film, choosing mood over mirth, sustains the darkness. While this works for some viewers, others find the omission glaring. The character's ridiculousness acted as a buffer for the constant sense of dread that permeates the third book. Without him, the mood becomes heavier, the pace more relentless, and the magical absurdity less pronounced. In terms of character development, Sir Cadogan adds depth not only to Hogwarts itself, but to the idea that magic isn't always elegant or useful. He's a reminder that this world, no matter how dangerous, remains joyfully unpredictable. Dumbledore understands this, allowing Cadogan to guard the common room despite his obvious flaws. It's a decision that feels deeply in character for the headmaster, who values individuality even in the strangest forms. This dynamic doesn't exist in the film, where the headmaster seems more like a distant strategist than a whimsical protector of youthful chaos. Another element lost in the film adaptation is the uniquely British absurdity that Cadogan embodies. Rowling's work often dances between the eerie and the eccentric, and Cadogan is the epitome of the latter. His speech is florid and antiquated, peppered with words like varlet and dastard. He acts like a knight pulled from a Monty Python sketch, sword-wielding and logic-defying. He was completely round the twist, Ron says in the book, a line that speaks to readers familiar with the kind of man who might wear armour to breakfast. His personality roots the magical world in the long tradition of British literary nonsense, from Lewis Carroll to Douglas Adams. His deletion from the film streamlines the narrative, but at the cost of losing this textured cultural layer. From a narrative standpoint, Cadogan also serves as an unintentional accomplice to the villain. By constantly changing passwords, he creates confusion and frustration among students, especially Neville. This directly leads to Sirius gaining access to the common room, a critical event in the story. The film adapts this moment differently, simply showing Sirius's presence without fully exploring how he entered. The absence of Cadogan reduces the stakes of password security and weakens the logical chain that leads to that critical scene. The book makes it clear magic isn't just powerful, it's messy, and even well-meaning paintings can become liabilities. There is also a missed opportunity in terms of visual storytelling. Sir Cadogan's design, shining armor, oversized sword, feathered helmet, and squeaky pony could have been a feast for the eyes. The moving paintings are one of the most distinctive features of the wizarding world, and yet we rarely see them truly alive. Cadogan's constant movement through frames, his dramatic posing, and over-the-top proclamations could have brought a new dimension to the magical realism of the castle. In a story so heavy with fear and shadow, he could have been the splash of light that reminds viewers Hogwarts is not merely a fortress, but a place of wonder. More than a comic relief, Cadogan reflects a theme repeated throughout Rowling's series. Bravery comes in many forms, not all of them useful. He is a knight in every way that matters, honourable, loyal, and convinced of his mission. But he is also utterly unprepared for reality, treating schoolchildren like dragon-wielding invaders. His courage is never questioned, only his sanity. And that complexity, a noble fool, is something the books relish. The films, aiming for coherence and tone, tend to favour characters with clear roles. Cadogan defies categorization, and so he vanishes. For fans of the book, Cadogan's absence in the film feels like the loss of a friend. He may not push the plot forward significantly, but he populates the world with colour and madness. Rowling's Hogwarts is alive because of characters like him, those who exist not to serve the main quest, but to make the world worth exploring. Removing him narrows the story, makes it tidier, but also a little less enchanted. His chaos was his contribution. He was not a hero in the traditional sense, but he made Gryffindor Tower feel like a real place where magic could go wonderfully wrong. In the end, Sir Cadogan's story within the book is brief but explosive. He charges into the plot like a knight on fire and leaves just as suddenly, demoted after his failures. But during his short reign, he changes the dynamic of Hogwarts. He teaches the students that magic is not always serious, that even guardians can be ridiculous, and that not every protector is competent. This is part of what makes Rowling's world so believable. It contains flaws, humour, and oddities that real life offers in abundance. The erasure of Cadogan is not a flaw of the film, but a creative choice with consequences. By removing him, the adaptation gains atmosphere but loses whimsy. It gains darkness but sacrifices lightness. It strengthens the threat of Sirius Black but weakens the reality of the magical school. Cadogan may not have duelled a dragon or uncovered a mystery, but he gave the reader something irreplaceable: laughter in the midst of fear, absurdity in the heart of danger, and a portrait that felt more alive than some of the flesh-and-blood characters. In the book, he is defeated by nothing more than a lack of patience from the staff. When he is replaced, no one mourns him. But readers remember him vividly. His legacy is not in what he accomplished, but in how loudly he failed, with honour, with flair, and with a sword pointed at the sky. In that failure, he carved out a place in the hearts of fans. In the film, he is a ghost that never was. In the book, he is the knight who made chaos noble. Number 21. Scabbers disappears early. In J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the disappearance of Scabbers the rat is more than a lost pet. It is a slow-burning fuse of suspicion, conflict, and emotional strain that permeates the story long before the climax. In the novel, Ron Weasley's rat doesn't vanish abruptly. Instead, he begins acting strangely early in the school year, growing thin and nervous, scratching and trembling in his cage. His odd behavior does not go unnoticed, but it becomes a source of rising tension between Ron and Hermione rather than a clue in the larger mystery. This emotional thread is pulled taut across many chapters, culminating in an intense rupture between the two friends when Scabbers goes missing entirely. Hermione's cat, Crookshanks, becomes the prime suspect, and Ron accuses her of being careless, if not downright complicit. It is this interpersonal conflict woven patiently through the narrative that gives the story its human heart. In contrast, the film adaptation excises this gradual build-up entirely. Scabbers is barely seen, and when he finally becomes relevant, it is in the shadowy rush toward the shrieking shack. The audience is never given time to care for the rat or worry over his absence. They don't witness the slow unraveling of Ron's temper or Hermione's quiet heartbreak over the accusations. The emotional stakes feel lower, not because the events themselves lack meaning, but because the groundwork has not been laid. Without that simmering tension, the eventual revelation of Scabbers' true identity lands with far less impact. It becomes a plot device, not a payoff. In the book, Scabbers disappears during Christmas break, right after Ron receives a sneakoscope from his brother and Hermione buys Crookshanks from the magical menagerie. There's a scene where Ron wakes up to find orange cat hairs on his bedsheets and his rat missing. His anger flares immediately, and Hermione, trying to defend her pet, only makes things worse. Ron shouts, "Your cat killed him!" and walks away, furious. This moment marks the beginning of a deep rift that continues to widen throughout the term. Readers feel the sting of betrayal, the discomfort of divided loyalties, and the sadness of friends no longer speaking. It's not just about a rat, it's about trust, grief, and the untold fragility of friendship. By midwinter in the novel, the divide is so pronounced that Harry finds himself trapped between his two best friends. He doesn't want to take sides, but he also can't fix what's broken. This puts a strain on the trio's usual dynamic. The reader feels the awkwardness in every shared meal, every group assignment. When Hermione tries to warn them about Buckbeak or helps them with homework, Ron responds coldly, reminding her that her cat murdered his pet. It's a recurring wound that refuses to heal. "If you cared about my feelings at all, you'd have gotten rid of that cat," he says at one point, a line that underscores how deeply personal the conflict has become. It's no longer about Scabbers alone, it's about hurt pride and wounded trust. Meanwhile, Crookshanks becomes a suspicious figure in his own right. He is seen lurking near the boys' dormitory, staring into Scabbers' cage with unnerving intensity. At one point, he even tries to snatch the rat during a hallway encounter, leading to a brief scuffle between Ron and Hermione. These moments add layers of suspicion, especially as the reader begins to wonder if Crookshanks knows something no one else does. This isn't just a pet feud, it's a mystery wrapped in personal drama. The rat's disappearance becomes a metaphor for the dissolution of peace within the trio, making its eventual resolution all the more satisfying. None of this emotional build-up appears in the film. Instead, Scabbers is treated as a background character, reappearing only in the climactic sequence when he bites Ron and flees into the Whomping Willow. The tension between Hermione and Ron is toned down to mere bickering. Crookshanks is present but sidelined, reduced to comic relief rather than a mysterious, semi-magical figure with hidden insight. There is no slow erosion of friendship, no long winter of silence between Ron and Hermione. The audience never sees the cost of Scabbers' disappearance, only its consequences. As a result, the shrieking shack confrontation feels like a sudden plot twist, not the resolution of a long, simmering emotional and narrative arc. The book uses Scabbers' absence to mirror the larger theme of identity and betrayal. Peter Pettigrew, hiding as a rat for 12 years, represents the deepest kind of treachery, a friend who betrayed his own to serve the enemy. But long before this is revealed, Rowling lays the emotional groundwork through Ron's grief and Hermione's guilt. When the truth comes out, readers are shocked not only because Scabbers is an animagus, but because they've spent the whole book mourning his loss. When Ron shouts, "You were sleeping in my bed," there is a personal violation felt, a sense of horror that his childhood companion was a traitor in disguise. This horror is diluted in the film, where the emotional groundwork is missing. Without seeing Ron's genuine affection for Scabbers or the painful fallout of his disappearance, viewers are left to interpret the revelation intellectually, not emotionally. The betrayal is shocking in concept, but not in feeling. The film sacrifices emotional pacing for brevity, and in doing so loses the human core of the story. A rat is not just a rat when it carries the weight of friendship and deception on its back. Moreover, Hermione's development suffers in the adaptation. In the book, her inner conflict is palpable. She tries to juggle a time-turner schedule, care for magical creatures, prepare Buckbeak's defense, and endure Ron's constant hostility, all while carrying the guilt of possibly being responsible for Scabbers' death. Her isolation is not just about academic pressure, it's emotional exile. She attends Hogsmeade weekends alone, works in the library with red-rimmed eyes, and avoids the Gryffindor common room whenever Ron is present. These details flesh her out as a deeply stressed and lonely teenager, making her eventual reconciliation with Ron heartfelt and cathartic. The film offers none of this depth. Hermione appears as her usual sharp, confident self, occasionally annoyed at Ron, but never truly heartbroken. Her overburdened schedule is only lightly touched upon, and her emotional unravelling never truly surfaces. The lack of Scabbers' disappearance as an ongoing source of pain robs Hermione of one of her most humanizing arcs. In the book, she becomes a portrait of endurance, flawed, proud, but deeply loyal. In the movie, she is merely efficient. Even Crookshanks, a character with eerie intuition and mysterious behavior in the book, is flattened in the film. Rowling hints that Crookshanks is part Kneazle, a magical creature known to detect untrustworthy individuals. This explains why he tries to attack Scabbers and later befriends Sirius Black in his dog form. Crookshanks is not just a cat, he is a creature with judgment and motive. He actively participates in the hunt for Peter Pettigrew, guiding Sirius and even helping to unlock doors. And this grants him a curious agency in the narrative, adding layers to the magical world's complexity. In the movie, Crookshanks does little more than hiss and pounce. His relationship with Sirius is omitted and his connection to the mystery is severed. The audience is never allowed to consider that a cat might be more than a pet in the wizarding world. This subtle magic, the idea that animals too have roles to play in great battles, is lost entirely. The film's decision to remove Crookshanks' involvement simplifies the story but also flattens its texture. The most glaring difference lies in emotional pacing. Rowling crafts tension with the precision of a slow-burning wick. Every chapter adds pressure, every scene tightens the emotional noose. By the time the truth is revealed in the Shrieking Shack, the reader's heart is pounding not just from the action, but from accumulated investment. The reunion of Sirius and Harry, the horror of Pettigrew's identity, and the trio's restored unity all feel earned. The book doesn't just tell you these events matter, it shows you through pain and patience. The film, by comparison, is in a rush. It reveals, explains, and resolves within the same breath. Scabbers appears, transforms, and vanishes, all within minutes. There's no sense of betrayal, no weight of time past. The characters react appropriately, but the audience doesn't feel alongside them. There is no echo of Hermione's guilt or Ron's grief. It's spectacle without substance. Thus, the disappearance of Scabbers is not a minor edit, it is a shift in storytelling philosophy. The book demands the reader invest emotionally, follow the slow disintegration of trust, and suffer through unresolved tension. The film chooses efficiency over depth, clarity over complexity. Both tell the same story in structure, but only one tells it with soul. Scabbers' early vanishing in the novel is not just a missing rat, it's the missing heart of the movie, number 22, The Threat of Sirius at Hogwarts. At the start of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the world outside Hogwarts is trembling with fear, and J.K. Rowling wastes no time drawing the reader into that collective unease. The Daily Prophet headlines scream about Sirius Black's escape. Wizards and muggles alike are warned, and the Ministry of Magic is in disarray. But as the Hogwarts Express rolls towards the castle, the atmosphere thickens. When the train halts unexpectedly and is boarded by a towering, soul-sucking Dementor, the chill of fear becomes literal. In the book, this sets the stage for a school year unlike any before, one marked by a near-constant state of lockdown. Yet when the story transitions to the screen in Alfonso Cuarón's film, this pervading sense of fear fades into the background, replaced by sweeping landscapes and stylistic choices that prioritize visual mood over narrative tension. From the first pages of the book, the threat of Sirius Black isn't just a headline, it's a living nightmare creeping closer. The reader watches as Cornelius Fudge personally warns Harry in the leaky cauldron and then insists on additional protection. But within the castle walls, the book turns Hogwarts into something unfamiliar. Dementors patrolled the school grounds, Rowling writes, and the entrances were guarded day and night. Students could not simply wander, they had to be escorted. Even during lessons, safety measures were in place. Yet none of this rigidity makes it to the film. Cuarón chooses to show sweeping shots of Hogwarts in fog, but never once shows the students being accompanied in the corridors, nor do professors seem particularly watchful. The visual metaphor is strong, but the emotional and logistical reality of living in fear is left out. In Rowling's narrative, even the portraits play a role in amplifying the climate of dread. The fat lady refuses to return to her post after Sirius tears through her canvas. Other paintings whisper, gossip, and argue about what might happen next. Hogwarts becomes alive with tension, where even inanimate things are affected by the news of a killer possibly lurking inside the castle. The film adaptation, however, offers only a brief mention of the fat lady's destruction and focuses more on comic relief than fear. Sir Cadogan appears, bumbling and absurd, and the genuine sense of danger embedded in the book evaporates into a quirky moment. The portraits become eccentric side characters rather than extensions of Hogwarts' alarm system. When students move between classes in the book, they are shadowed by teachers and prefects. Professors are unusually stern. McGonagall is sharper than usual, Flitwick hesitant, and even Snape shows less sarcasm and more apprehension. There's a quiet sense that none of the adults feel fully in control. It affects their behavior. When students ask to go to Hogsmeade, they're met with suspicion and concern. It's not safe, McGonagall insists, but the film shows none of this. The students roam freely. Harry stands alone on the bridge, staring into the horizon. Visually poetic, yes, but out of sync with a story supposedly taking place under martial vigilance. In the book, every shadow is suspect, every creak a possible intrusion. One scene, seemingly trivial, shows Seamus Finnegan jumping when a window bangs open. Another has Neville Longbottom misplacing passwords and trembling under the pressure. Dumbledore, always calm, is now described as grim-faced during staff meetings. The faculty is tense. Filch quadruples his rounds. Even Peeves is quieter than usual. The castle seems to know it is vulnerable. Yet Cuarón's Hogwarts is stunningly beautiful and haunting, but it does not feel sealed off or fearful. The halls are still full of playful mischief, students sit on grass, and the sky is always dramatic but not oppressive. This artistic discrepancy results in the perception of Sirius Black as less menacing. In the film, his image flashes briefly in the newspaper and on posters, but the magnitude of what he represents is diluted. The book tells us repeatedly that he's the first person to ever escape Azkaban. He is painted as someone so dangerous that even seasoned aurors fear his name. In classes like divination and defense against the dark arts, the theme of fear is tangible. Professor Trelawney constantly predicts death. Lupin teaches about creatures born from fear itself, but the movie chooses to focus more on the artistic tone of fog and mystery rather than making Sirius a tangible threat. The third book's tension is not just built on words, it's built on rules and restrictions. Students are not allowed to leave common rooms without reason. There's a curfew. Even letters are screened. Fred and George joke about Sirius finding his way into Gryffindor Tower, but the laughter is strained. Harry is watched more closely than ever before, not just because of his fame, but because teachers genuinely believe he is in danger. In the film, this context is glossed over. Harry sneaks around freely. He uses the Marauders map not as a tool for survival, but as a playful device. The tone shifts from peril to mild rebellion. When Sirius finally does break into the castle in the book, it's not just a twist, it's the culmination of mounting fear. Everyone feels exposed. Dumbledore orders searches. Students are confined to their houses. The castle goes silent. This silence is one of the most powerful weapons Rowling uses. The fear isn't always shouted, it's whispered. It's in the way Percy Weasley walks a bit straighter. It's in the lines on Lupin's tired face. But the film does not slow down to register this shift. After Sirius is found standing over Ron with a knife, the students are briefly shocked, and then the story moves on. The emotional weight of that invasion is never allowed to settle. The book's greatest strength lies in how it portrays Hogwarts not as a safe haven, but as a place under siege, and yet it never loses its identity. Quidditch matches still happen but are nearly cancelled. Hermione still attends classes but breaks down from stress. Ron and Harry still bicker, but their arguments are sharper, tinged with the stress of not feeling safe. It's a layered tension, a web of small details building an atmosphere of isolation. The film simplifies this, choosing instead to focus on select visual motifs: fog, crows, the Whomping Willow shaking off seasons. Beautiful, yes, but lacking the emotional complexity of the book's anxious silence. The patrolling Dementors are perhaps the greatest absence. In the book, they are not just guards. They are a looming presence, embodiments of dread. Students get sick in their presence. Harry faints. Even adults are affected. When they search the Hogwarts Express, it's more than a security check. It's a psychological invasion. Everything went cold, Rowling writes, and Harry felt as though happiness had left the world. But in the film, the Dementors are merely monsters in a horror scene. Their presence is visual and momentary, not atmospheric or lasting. The students do not speak of them in hushed tones. The teachers do not argue about their presence, and that makes all the difference. Even Hagrid, usually a figure of comfort and innocence, changes in the book. As the new Care of Magical Creatures teacher, he tries to maintain cheer, but his usual bravado is dimmed. After Buckbeak's incident, Hagrid becomes withdrawn. The tension touches even him. He's afraid of the Ministry, of losing his job, of what Sirius might do. That fear gives depth to his character. In the film, this is largely erased. Hagrid remains a jolly figure, with little sign of the weight pressing on his shoulders. His role as emotional mirror to the students is underplayed. Every layer of Rowling's Hogwarts is impacted by the danger. Even the ghosts are less visible. Nearly headless Nick doesn't float around offering comic relief. He, too, avoids the halls more than usual. It's a small but telling detail. The ghosts of Hogwarts sense the shift. The school is no longer simply ancient. It feels haunted in a new way, not by spirits, but by fear itself. The film misses this transformation entirely. The school remains majestic, but it never feels under siege. In the book, isolation is real. Students from different houses stop mingling. Common rooms become places of retreat, not just recreation. The camaraderie between Gryffindor and Hufflepuff is strained. People whisper instead of talk. Rumours fly. Harry feels alone, not just because of his past, but because the world around him is growing darker. This isolation is crucial to understanding his mindset. In the film, Harry's solitude is portrayed as moody adolescence, not as the result of psychological pressure and collective dread. What's ultimately lost in the film is the emotional truth of fear. Rowling captures how children experience threat, not through grand battles, but through small restrictions, silences, and watchful glances. Hogwarts becomes a fortress, not just physically, but emotionally, and in that fortress, everyone feels a little more alone, a little more afraid. The threat of Sirius Black is not just about what he might do, but what fear does to a community. The film, while beautiful and imaginative, tells the story of a mysterious outsider. The book tells the story of a school on edge. That difference is profound. Number 23. Lupin learns about the map later. In the still shadows of Professor Lupin's office, tucked behind the quiet hum of Defense Against the Dark Arts lessons and the flickering of candlelight, a striking contrast lies hidden between the book and the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. One moment, often glanced over in the rush of cinematic pacing, reveals volumes about Lupin's character and his relationship with Harry, if only you read between the lines. In the film, when Lupin halts Harry just before he sets out on another reckless trip to Hogsmeade using the Marauders' map, he seems already aware of what the parchment holds. He even recognizes it immediately, as if it were something he had expected to appear in Harry's possession all along. But in the book, the truth comes later, heavier and much more revealing. The Marauders' map, enchanted and mischievous, is a symbol of rebellion, intimacy, and a past that never quite lets go. In the movie, Lupin glances at it once and admits, casually, "I know it's a map," leaving viewers with the impression that he had always kept a quiet vigil over Harry's antics. The line removes any doubt. Lupin appears in control, almost omniscient. Yet this portrayal strips away the complexity of his emotional world, a detail J.K. Rowling so carefully threaded in her writing. In truth, in the novel, Lupin doesn't discover Harry has been using the Marauders' map until Severus Snape shoves it into his hands. The book does not paint Lupin as an all-knowing guardian. He is a man haunted by the memories of his youth and the friends he lost. James Potter, Sirius Black, Peter Pettigrew, all of whom helped create the very map now being used by James's son to sneak out of school grounds. When Snape storms into Lupin's office with the map, accusing Harry of dark magic, Lupin is genuinely startled. Rowling writes, "Professor Lupin looked from Snape to Harry and then said, 'I don't think a map could be dangerous.'" The hesitation in his words reveals that he had no prior knowledge that Harry had come into possession of the artifact. In that moment, the mask slips. He's not the calm observer from the movie, he's blindsided and deeply concerned. This single scene alters everything. The reader feels Lupin's fear, not of punishment or rules being broken, but of the ghosts of his past returning to endanger someone he cares about. His confrontation with Harry afterward is not casual, nor is it merely disciplinary. It is layered with dread and a protective instinct, underscoring his role not as a passive professor, but as a man clinging desperately to whatever fragments of safety he can offer to the boy left behind by his best friend. Rowling writes, "Don't expect me to cover up for you again, Harry. I cannot condone what you did. I am absolutely appalled." These words hit harder than any lecture. Lupin feels betrayed, not because Harry deceived the school, but because he used a relic from a past too painful to revisit. In contrast, the movie turns this confrontation into something perfunctory. Lupin already seems to know about the map's origins and casually informs Harry of his familiarity with it. The emotional weight vanishes. The viewer is left with a version of Lupin who is too composed, too in control. It's as though the loss of James, the betrayal of Peter, and the imprisonment of Sirius have left no scars. He's simply a clever professor who remembers an old school trick. But the novel insists otherwise. Lupin's discovery is fresh, jarring. When he sees the map again, it is not nostalgia he feels. It is pain. This revision in the film removes the moral tension of Lupin's character. The book shows a man torn between his love for James's memory and his duty as a teacher. He wants to protect Harry, but also to keep him from walking into the same reckless patterns that cost his friends their lives. The Marauders map, to Lupin, is not a harmless trinket. It is the last echo of a brotherhood that shattered. Each line of ink on its surface is drawn from laughter that ended in silence. To find that in Harry's hands is like finding a letter from the dead, one that both warms the heart and freezes the soul. Even more telling is Lupin's reaction to Snape's accusations. In the book, Lupin goes out of his way to defuse the situation, not because he wishes to shield Harry from consequences, but because the map implicates his own past. "It looks like a Zonko's product," he lies, trying to redirect Snape. The lie is not convincing, and it is not meant to be. It is a protective impulse, a moment of panic born of guilt. The film ignores this tension. Lupin doesn't lie. He doesn't hesitate. He simply takes the map and moves the story forward, as though nothing inside him breaks at the sight of it. It is this rupture, the one in Lupin's heart, not just in the timeline, that gives the book its resonance. The Marauder's map becomes a character in itself, carrying the weight of grief, mischief, and loss. The film, by simplifying Lupin's reaction, severs the map from its emotional roots. It becomes a plot device, a magical GPS that tells Harry where to go, but in the book, it is a thread tying him to his father and a reminder for Lupin that time has not healed everything. Moreover, the timing of Lupin's discovery in the book raises the stakes. It doesn't happen until the story is already deep into suspense and betrayal. This delay allows Lupin to have a genuine reaction, not only to the map, but to what it says about Harry's behavior. Lupin, who has always admired Harry's bravery, suddenly sees recklessness. He sees the same dangerous charisma James once wielded, and it scares him. He is not only reacting as a teacher, but as a man who has seen what happens when boys become legends too soon. When Lupin says, "Your father wouldn't have been proud, Harry," the book tears away the comfort of mythology. It shows that even heroes make mistakes, and even their sons must be told the truth. The film never says this. It leaves James's memory untarnished and Lupin's mentorship sanitized. The confrontation loses its fire, but the book insists on truth no matter how painful. Lupin loves Harry, but he will not lie to him. That makes him a real mentor, not just a likable character. The complexity of Lupin's discovery is not just about plot, it's about emotion. When he sees the map, he does not only see the mischief of 4 boys, he sees the betrayal of Peter Pettigrew, the ghost of Sirius Black, and the grave of James Potter. Each name, Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, echoes like a bell tolling over a battlefield of memories. That's why his reaction is so strong, so unfiltered. The book gives us that depth. The movie trades it for speed. Even Lupin's decision to confiscate the map carries weight. He does not give it back. He keeps it as if it must be locked away again, sealed from the fresh pain it could cause. He is not angry at Harry as much as he is heartbroken. The map should have remained buried with the past. Instead, it came back into the light, held by the son of a man whose death Lupin never truly accepted. The film never touches this sadness. Lupin never changes in his tone or demeanor. The loss is invisible, but the book dares to show a man breaking. The difference between book and film is not merely factual, it is emotional. In the book, Lupin's reaction tells us about his regrets, his hopes, and the inner war he fights every day. In the film, he is a calm guide, a background figure with all the answers. But readers who pay attention know better. They know that when Lupin sees the map, he is not just looking at parchment and ink. He is seeing his past laid bare and his heart cracked open. The delayed revelation in the book allows us to see Lupin not as a teacher who always knows best, but as a man who still mourns. It shows us a moment of raw vulnerability, of honest confrontation between memory and present danger. And in doing so, it grants Lupin a humanity the film was too quick to bypass. That humanity, that trembling voice beneath the calm exterior, is what makes him unforgettable. Number 24. Time Turner, dangers omitted. In the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the Time Turner appears almost like a whimsical tool in a fairy tale. Hermione and Harry slip into the past with a spin of the hourglass, navigating the grounds of Hogwarts with purpose and clarity. They dodge obstacles, save Buckbeak, rescue Sirius Black, and return just in time for dawn to break. It's a thrilling, almost light-hearted sequence, laced with tension, but ultimately triumphant. The danger is real, but distant, softened by the musical score and quick pacing. Yet in the book, the Time Turner is far from light-hearted. It is introduced as a dangerous, highly controlled magical object whose misuse can result in chaos, paradoxes, and even death. Hermione had not just borrowed the Time Turner on a whim. She had been granted temporary permission by the Ministry of Magic under the most exceptional circumstances. Her desire to take multiple classes at the same time would never have been enough. Dumbledore himself had to vouch for her responsibility. Professor McGonagall oversaw the process, and both women made it clear that the device was not to be misused. Dumbledore warned Hermione explicitly. "You know what happened to those who meddled with time?" he said ominously. There was history behind that warning, a dark past of wizards who had tried and failed, who had torn the fabric of time and left tragedy in their wake. But none of this makes it into the film. The film rushes through the implications of time travel, giving us a smooth, almost sanitized version of events. We do not feel the weight of the responsibility Hermione carries. We do not see the sleepless nights she might have endured, planning every move with obsessive precision. In the book, there is no room for improvisation or whimsy. Every step back in time is haunted by the danger of being seen, not just by others, but by their earlier selves. Awful things happen to wizards who meddle with time, Dumbledore warns. The gravity in his tone is palpable, but in the movie, his role is reduced to a knowing smile and a subtle nudge. There is also an eerie tension in the book during their journey through time. Harry and Hermione move through the grounds, not as adventurous heroes, but as ghosts watching the past unfold. They are silent, cautious, hidden. Every move is calculated, every decision precise. When they witness themselves being dragged away by Hagrid, or when they spy on Buckbeak's execution from behind the trees, there is a constant awareness that any wrong move might unravel the events they had just experienced. The book makes it clear this is not just a magical trick. This is a delicate, dangerous manipulation of reality. Moreover, the psychological pressure Hermione faces throughout the third book is barely explored in the film. She is a 13-year-old juggling an impossible academic load, concealing a magical secret from her friends and navigating the strain of repeated time travel. The Time Turner is not a toy, it is a burden. While the movie uses it as a convenient plot device to wrap up the third act with flair, the book positions it as a test of character. Hermione's ability to manage it is not simply because she is clever, it is because she is responsible, determined, and capable of managing dangerous magic without faltering. In the novel, there is a chilling moment when Harry realizes he was the one who cast the Patronus to save himself and Sirius. It's a paradox that strikes deep. He had believed his father would appear, had even seen a silhouette that resembled James, but it was him. The Time Turner allowed him to complete a loop of fate to become his own savior. This moment is executed in the film, but it lacks the psychological depth found in the book. There, we follow Harry's inner turmoil, his belief that someone else would save them, and the eventual realization that he had to act because no one else would. It's not just magic, it's maturity. Dumbledore's role in orchestrating the time travel also shifts drastically between mediums. In the book, he is a puppet master of sorts, giving only enough information to guide Hermione and Harry without breaking the fragile timeline. He knows he must not interfere, not even hint at what they might face. In the film, he is more relaxed, even amused. He gives Hermione a simple push, a cryptic line, and disappears. The intricate dance of manipulation and restraint that defines Dumbledore's character is flattened, lost beneath cinematic simplicity. One of the most important thematic messages of the book, our inability to escape fate without consequence, is muted in the film. Rowling carefully crafts a world where time is not to be toyed with. Even when it works, even when the plan succeeds, there is a solemn undertone. They do not celebrate when they return, they do not boast or cheer, they simply go back to their dormitories and wait for dawn, hearts pounding, knowing that if a single moment had gone wrong, they might have destroyed everything. The gravity is absent from the movie. The book also provides deeper insight into the bureaucracy and rigidity of the Ministry of Magic. Time-turners are not handed out like textbooks. They are locked away, tightly monitored. Even Hermione's academic record and reputation did not grant her access without intervention from the highest levels of authority. There is a paper trail, caution, fear. In contrast, the film acts as though Dumbledore could casually loan out such magic to solve any problem. It reduces the mystique of the wizarding world's laws and safeguards, undermining the very tension that makes the third book so compelling. We must also consider how the change affects the legacy of the time-turner within the series. After Prisoner of Azkaban, time-turners are barely mentioned again. In the fifth book, we learn that the Ministry's supply was destroyed during the Battle of the Department of Mysteries. The film's portrayal makes this seem inconsequential. But in the books, this destruction is a relief. There is a sense that this volatile power, capable of breaking reality, is finally beyond reach. The wizarding world, for better or worse, is safer without it. By removing the danger and consequence of time travel in the film, the adaptation also reduces Hermione's achievement. Her success in executing the mission, in managing the stress and precision it required, is a testament to her character. In the film, that triumph is hidden beneath flashy visuals. She is brave and smart, yes, but not in the same desperate, disciplined way that the book reveals. Her time-turner adventure in the book is a hero's test, not just an adventure through the past. Harry, too, is changed by the time-turner arc in the book. His belief in his father's presence, followed by the realization that he himself was the source of that hope, is one of the most poetic and haunting moments in the series. It is a turning point in his growth, the beginning of his self-reliance. The film delivers the event, but not the evolution. We see the Patronus, but we don't fully feel Harry's revelation. We see the light, but not the darkness that preceded it. The haunting nature of time, the impossibility of undoing pain without cost, the eerie echo of one's own steps, these themes thread through the pages of the book like a whisper. Rowling does not romanticize the magic. She surrounds it with rules, with fear, with tension. The past is not a place to play. It is a graveyard of mistakes, one false move from disaster. The movie gives us the fantasy, the book gives us the fear. Perhaps the most significant loss in the film is the philosophical weight of Dumbledore's wisdom. His words to Hermione in the book are not just warnings, they are truths forged through centuries of magical history. When he says, "You must not be seen," he is not merely offering advice, he is reciting the first commandment of magical time travel. His voice carries the weight of lives ruined, of time loops gone wrong, of realities split in two. The movie trims this down to a clever plot twist. The book makes it a moral dilemma. When Harry and Hermione finally succeed in rescuing Sirius and Buckbeak, the book gives us no time to rest. They do not celebrate. They flee. They vanish into the night, knowing that what they did was right and terrifyingly dangerous. The silence in the pages that follow is louder than any explosion. They broke time just for a moment, and the world kept spinning, but it could have stopped, and that is the difference. That is what the movie forgets. Number 25. Percy Weasley's cut roll. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Percy Weasley's presence in the book is persistent and oddly poignant. He is not merely a side character. He represents the first visible crack in the unity of the Weasley family, the early hint of ambition stretching beyond kinship. In the book, J.K. Rowling draws Percy with meticulous strokes, the prefect's badge gleaming, the ever-upright posture, the obsession with rules. He's deeply absorbed in his responsibilities, and his every interaction with his younger siblings, especially Fred and George, is tinged with self-importance. "I'm a prefect," he reminds them constantly, not just to assert authority, but because it validates his fragile sense of self. He's still a boy in a world of magic, but he hides behind his titles like armor. None of this comes across in the film. The movie Prisoner of Azkaban all but erases Percy Weasley. He appears briefly like a shadow in the background of a few scenes, but not once does he speak. For a viewer unfamiliar with the books, Percy is just another nameless redhead in a Gryffindor robe. His absence is not immediately jarring, but what it steals from the story is subtle and significant. Without Percy's presence, the dynamics of the Weasley family flatten. The friction between Fred and George's mischief and Percy's rigidity, the tension between youthful rebellion and aspirational conformity, all of it disappears. The film gains in speed and mood, but loses in layered humanity. In the book, Percy's over-the-top discipline is a running source of humor and irritation. He patrols the corridors like a ministry clerk in training, and he takes special pride in reminding his brothers of school rules. Fred and George find endless amusement in goading him. They drop dung bombs just to rile him, mock his love for Penelope Clearwater behind his back, and offer sarcastic salutes whenever he walks by. Percy threatens to report them more than once. Rowling writes, Percy was in his element, marching around with an air of self-importance, so exaggerated it was hard not to laugh. This line, so simple, delivers a full portrait of who Percy is and why he matters. It's not about comic relief. It's about a teenager trying desperately to carve out an identity distinct from the chaos of his family. In contrast, Alfonso Cuarón's direction in the third film leans into mood and atmosphere, crafting a world of dark forests, moving staircases, and shifting shadows. There is barely space for characters like Percy, who rely on consistency and dialogue rather than visual drama. The film introduces Harry's internal conflict, the shadow of Sirius Black, and the Dementor's looming dread, but it also strips out the smaller human frictions that gave the book texture. Percy's ambition and pomposity are casualties of adaptation, edited out to make room for thematic gravitas. This omission is more than just one character vanishing from the screen. Percy's presence in the book sets the stage for his eventual defection in Order of the Phoenix. In Prisoner of Azkaban, readers see the beginning of a transformation. Percy aligning more with authority than with family. He idolizes the Ministry of Magic. He worships rules. He believes in structure more than in loyalty. When he insists on maintaining discipline, even during the mass panic over Sirius Black's supposed appearance in the castle, it becomes clear. Percy's priorities are already shifting. Without this development in Azkaban, his betrayal in later books feels abrupt in the films. The groundwork was never laid. Rowling uses Percy not as a villain, but as a warning. He's what happens when ambition outweighs compassion. In the book, McGonagall often calls on Percy for tasks. She treats him like a junior staff member. Percy relishes the attention. He prides himself on being trusted, and he mentions it more than once to Ron, always with a condescending smirk. In one chapter, he even reprimands Ron for being late, saying, "Professor McGonagall asked me to keep an eye on the common room. Try not to disgrace yourself." It's a small moment, but it sings with meaning. Percy is trying to climb a ladder that exists only in his mind, and he's willing to belittle his brother to do it. The film skips this scene entirely. It's in the day-to-day moments of the book that Percy becomes vivid. His constant bragging about his top marks, his obsession with writing reports for the ministry internship, his insistence that Penelope Clearwater is an intellectual equal. These aren't throwaway lines. They shape a portrait of a boy straining to leave his roots behind. The other Weasleys are warm, messy, and chaotic. Percy is tidy and cold. The contrast is intentional, and it enriches the emotional landscape of the Weasley household. On screen, with Percy silenced, the family appears more unified than it really is. The film also robs the story of narrative continuity. Percy's trajectory across the books is one of the most quietly devastating. By the time he joins the ministry and refuses to believe Harry and Dumbledore, his alienation is complete. But in the films, viewers never really meet this version of Percy. He is barely distinguishable from a background student. There is no tension between him and Ron, no rivalry with Fred and George, no evidence of his aspirations. So when he appears in Order of the Phoenix, siding with the ministry, it feels like a new character has been introduced rather than an old one transformed. The emotional punch is missing. One of the most emblematic scenes in the book involves Percy reporting to Professor McGonagall that Sirius Black has broken into the Gryffindor common room. He's panicked but also smug, eager to demonstrate how diligently he's been performing his prefect duties. He stands rigidly, almost like a soldier, while McGonagall brushes past him. "I was awake, Professor," he says, as if that alone will earn him glory. Rowling doesn't mock him outright. She leaves that to Fred and George, but she shows his earnest desire to be recognized. It's both funny and tragic, the portrait of a boy who wants desperately to matter. The film erases this. Fred and George's dynamic with Percy is more than just comic relief. It's a central axis of sibling contrast. They live to push boundaries. Percy lives to enforce them. In Azkaban, their pranks are not random. They're precise provocations aimed at exposing how seriously Percy takes himself. They nick his badge and transfigure it to say, "Big Head Boy." They float toast past his face in the Great Hall. It's all designed to puncture his inflated ego. And Percy, true to form, responds with outrage and threats. "You just wait," he snaps. "One more stunt and I'll write to Mum." These scenes define them as a trio. Remove Percy, and the twins lose a key part of their identity. Even Ron, who often feels overshadowed in the Weasley family, measures himself against Percy. In Azkaban, Ron expresses grudging respect for Percy's achievements, but also rolls his eyes at his pompous behavior. When Percy warns him about breaking curfew, Ron mutters, "He's not the bloody headmaster." It's a brotherly moment, sharp, funny, and revealing. Ron doesn't want to be Percy, but he still feels the pressure of living up to him. In the film, this friction is absent. Ron's place in the family becomes simpler, but also less nuanced. Percy also functions as a mirror for Harry. Where Harry questions authority, Percy embraces it. Where Harry acts on instinct, Percy waits for permission. During the chaos of Black's supposed attacks, Percy's response is to enforce bedtime and report everything. Harry's is to search for truth. The contrast is never directly stated, but it hums beneath the narrative. Percy represents the easy path, compliance, careerism, alignment with power. Harry represents the harder path, rebellion, morality, truth. That tension adds richness to the book's themes. The film discards it. In the book, even Percy's relationship with Penelope Clearwater is a thread that matters. It's a teenage romance played for laughs, but it humanizes him. Fred and George discover the secret affair and delight in embarrassing him. When Percy goes red with fury and shame, it's a rare moment of vulnerability. He isn't just a prig, he's a boy in love, trying to keep his private world intact. That warmth, however brief, rounds out his character. The film gives us none of it. Percy's storyline, though seemingly minor in Azkaban, is part of a long arc that culminates in heartbreak and redemption. His estrangement in Order of the Phoenix, his absence during Half-Blood Prince, and his final return in Deathly Hallows are all foreshadowed by the pride and distance we first see here. Stripping him from the third film doesn't just remove a side character, it weakens a family saga that spans the entire series. The Weasley story is not just about unity, but about what threatens it. And Percy is the first sign that not all Weasleys stay together. Without Percy, the castle feels quieter, the common room less fraught, the Weasleys less real. He was never the most beloved character, but he was one of the most essential. His flaws, so loudly displayed in Prisoner of Azkaban, were the very things that made him unforgettable. The film chose shadow over structure, mood over minutiae. But in doing so, it lost one of the most human ghosts haunting the halls of Hogwarts. Number 26. Hagrid's cabin farewell scene. In the soft golden light of late afternoon, the film Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban casts a serene yet ominous tone as Harry and Hermione crouch quietly among the towering pumpkins near Hagrid's hut. From a distance, they observe the committee of executioners approaching, shadows creeping through the tall grass. The camera lingers on their hidden faces, capturing their unease as the blade falls somewhere out of frame. It's a moment that relies on silence, on the power of implication. But in doing so, it brushes past the emotional gravity that J.K. Rowling so carefully built in the novel. The film offers a visual shorthand for grief and tension, but the heart of the scene, the raw human connection between the characters, is lost behind those pumpkins. In the book, that same afternoon is drenched in sorrow, not silence. Harry, Ron, and Hermione do not hide. They walk straight through the grounds up to Hagrid's door, knowing the gravity of what awaits. Their arrival is not stealthy, it's deliberate, defiant. The trio enters the hut not to spy or watch, but to offer comfort to a friend on what may be one of the worst days of his life. This choice, this willingness to step into grief rather than merely observe it, is a defining moment of character development, particularly for Hermione, whose emotional breakthrough gives this scene much of its soul. Inside the hut, the atmosphere is thick with despair. Hagrid is a mess of emotions. It's not dead, he chokes out, talking about Buckbeak as if he can't quite believe what's happening. His massive hands tremble as he pours tea for the children, spilling it as he talks. Rowling doesn't rush through the moment. Instead, she lets it breathe, detailing the sound of Hagrid's sobs, the way Fang hides his face, the way the friends exchange looks that speak volumes. This is not a quick stop on the plot's path. It's a sanctuary for grief, a pause in the storm. And Hermione, usually so composed, breaks the emotional barrier with one unexpected act. She suddenly reached out and embraced Hagrid, her arms wrapped around his enormous waist. It's one of the most touching lines in the book, not because it's dramatic, but because it's so profoundly human. This is not the logical Hermione who worries about rules and schedules. This is Hermione, the young girl who cannot bear to see her friend suffer. Her embrace isn't planned. It rises naturally from the pain in the room. It's messy and spontaneous and achingly sincere, and it's nowhere to be found in the film. The movie cuts out this emotional pivot entirely. There is no embrace, no quiet tea with trembling hands, no physical presence in Hagrid's grief. The children never enter the hut in the film's timeline. They remain viewers, not participants. And in doing so, the adaptation avoids the discomfort of raw, unfiltered emotion. It leans instead on visual metaphors, scattered feathers, distant shouts, the sudden thud of a blade, to do what words had once done so precisely. But the price of that choice is steep. The humanity of the moment is lost. More than just a missed emotional opportunity, the film's version creates a domino effect that weakens the integrity of the surrounding narrative. In the book, while the trio is inside Hagrid's hut, something crucial happens. Scabbers, Ron's pet rat, makes a surprise appearance. His sudden reappearance after being presumed dead is not only shocking, but significant. "Scabbers!" Ron gasps, reaching for the trembling creature. This moment sets the stage for the unraveling mystery of Peter Pettigrew and ties directly into the next major plot development. Without it, the flow of the story loses a vital pulse. The Rat's return is more than plot mechanics. It's woven with emotional tension. The joy of finding Scabbers is quickly overshadowed by unease. The Rat is thin, anxious and frightened. His presence in the hut while the children try to console Hagrid layers the scene with growing anxiety. Readers sense the shift. Something is wrong, something is coming. But in the film, this layered build-up never happens. There is no careful planting of tension inside a grief-stricken space. Instead, the film relies on later scenes to deliver revelations that feel disjointed, unmoored from the heartache they originally sprang from. Another absent element is the sense of shared vulnerability. In the book, even Ron, still limping from his injured leg, drags himself along to be with Hagrid. His frustration about Scabbers fades into concern for his friend. Harry, battling his own internal storms about Sirius Black, still prioritizes Hagrid's sorrow. Their choice to be present in that moment reveals a maturity that has been slowly building throughout the year. They're not children seeking adventure. They are young people beginning to understand the cost of loyalty and loss. The emotional climax of the scene does not come with the execution, but with Hagrid's broken voice as he says, "Thanks, thank you both. You don't know how much that means to me." That line carries weight because it is earned. It comes after a page and a half of characters listening, comforting, being fully present in the grief of another. The reader feels it because Rowling wrote it with tenderness and care. No film shortcut can replicate that kind of resonance without the same investment. The decision to place the characters outside the hut also alters the symbolism. In the book, being inside with Hagrid is an act of courage and compassion. Outside, as in the film, it becomes passive, an act of observation. The characters watch the world happen without influencing it. It subtly shifts the tone of their heroism. They do not comfort, they witness. They do not interrupt the injustice, they hide. This might work cinematically, but it strips the moment of its emotional truth. By skipping the personal scene inside the hut, the film also removes a crucial insight into Hagrid's pain. In the book, he speaks of Buckbeak not just as a creature, but as a friend. His anguish is deeply tied to his own sense of failure and helplessness. "I should have known. I should have known this had happened." Those lines are raw, exposing the guilt that festers beneath his sorrow. The children, by listening, give him a space to confess, to mourn, to feel less alone. In the film, that vulnerability is replaced by background noise, left hanging in the air instead of spoken aloud. The removal of Hermione's embrace is especially poignant. It marks one of the rare moments where she acts entirely on instinct. Her empathy becomes physical, her brilliance replaced by compassion. It is a defining moment for her character, one that shows she is more than intellect, she is kindness. To exclude it from the film is to mute one of the story's softest, most resonant truths. It denies viewers the quiet beauty of her character's depth. Even the staging is different. In the book, the hut is cluttered, warm, filled with the smell of tea and the low growls of Fang. It is a physical space of sorrow. In the film, the hut becomes almost a set piece, an exterior landmark for staging events. It's no longer lived in or emotional, it's a location, not a character in itself. Rowling made Hagrid's home a place of comfort and grief. The film transforms it into a backdrop for plot beats. This change reflects a broader trend in the adaptation. Where Rowling dives into emotion, the film often glides across it. Scenes that should ache are trimmed for time. Reactions that should linger are brushed aside. The story moves, but without its pulse. In cutting the Hagrid hut scene, the filmmakers cut through the very core of the emotional rhythm that makes the third book so rich. It's not just a narrative shift, it's a loss of soul. Ultimately, the hut scene in the book is not about Buckbeak, it's about grief, friendship, and the silent bravery of being there for someone who is suffering. It's about the characters choosing to feel, to comfort, to connect. It's about Hermione breaking her usual self to give someone a hug. And it's about the quiet ticking of fate as a rat scurries through the straw, signalling the next storm on the horizon. None of that survives in the movie. What's left is a visual echo of a scene that once throbbed with heart. In literature, these moments matter. They give characters dimension, stories depth, and readers something to hold on to. The absence of the hut scene is not just a cut, it's a missed opportunity to let the audience feel what the book so powerfully conveys. That true courage sometimes means simply showing up, even when nothing can be fixed.